When Animal Crossing New Horizons released, it emerged as a highly anticipated installment for the Nintendo Switch, promising to elevate the beloved series to new heights. Animal Crossing New Horizons became a global phenomenon, with people around the world facing lockdowns and social distancing measures. The game provided a virtual escape while also maintaining a sense of community. Its tranquil and immersive gameplay, coupled with the ability to connect with friends and visit each other's islands, offered solace and a way to somewhat stay connected during a time of isolation. The game's popularity skyrocketed as it became a cultural phenomenon, attracting both longtime fans and new players who sought comfort, relaxation, and respite from the challenges of the real world. While there was a core Animal Crossing fanbase, though, who had played the franchise before and knew exactly why the charm and depth of Animal Crossing was so special, there was definitely an influx of brand new players who didn't necessarily know the history and the legacy from the previous titles as well. And since its release, New Horizons, though, has sparked debate amongst longtime fans who passionately argue over whether or not this game actually lives up to the standards set by its predecessors, specifically one game, Animal Crossing New Leaf. So today we are embarking on an exploration to compare and contrast these charming virtual worlds and uncover the strengths, weaknesses, and unique qualities of each title. From the wealth of content and features to the updates and overall player experiences, we will examine how these games differ and which aspects resonate most with the dedicated Animal Crossing fanbase. So join us as we dissect the charm, the nostalgia, and the lasting impact of Animal Crossing New Leaf while scrutinizing the ambitious vision and potential of Animal Crossing New Horizons. But I'll be honest, as a longtime fan of the Animal Crossing franchise, New Horizons definitely did something special and unique. So I'm not necessarily coming into this just wanting to fully knock New Horizons here. This is going to be an interesting and difficult quest of comparing titles here, because I think it's going to be worthwhile, because there's really a lot to appreciate about both of these titles, as different as they may seem. Let's go back over a decade. When Animal Crossing New Leaf was released in 2012, it marked a significant milestone for the franchise. Building upon the success of its predecessors, New Leaf was hailed as the ultimate culmination of everything that fans had loved about the series. The game retained the beloved elements of the previous titles, like the villagers, the town atmosphere, and of course the addictive daily routines. However, New Leaf also introduced some new features that elevated the gaming experience. Players now had the opportunity to take on the role as the mayor of their town. With the newfound responsibility, it allowed players to shape and customize their town in unprecedented ways, granting a greater sense of agency and personalization within each town. This game blended nostalgia and innovation for Animal Crossing and captured the hearts of fans, solidifying its status as a beloved entry in the series. And in its lifetime, it sold over 13 million units, becoming the 6th best-selling Nintendo 3DS game, and introduced a ton of new fans to the series. Also, it's worth noting, the 3DS had a pretty rocky start sales-wise and didn't pick up momentum until later on in the console's lifecycle. So the fact that Animal Crossing was released early on in the life of the 3DS and maintained its spot in the top 10 through the entire course of the 3DS's life is worth noting, especially since the 3DS did pick up steam later on in popularity. Still, Animal Crossing New Leaf managed to stay at the top. Alternatively, Animal Crossing New Horizons came out in March 2020, after a delay from the planned release of holiday 2019. This game would be massive, gaining extra traction, partially due to the global lockdown, giving players around the world more time to do other things like play Animal Crossing. And to date, Animal Crossing New Horizons is the best-selling title in franchise history and the second best-selling Nintendo Switch game, with a whopping 42 million copies sold, only being beat out by Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And for context, this game sold 11 million more units than the widely popular Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So Animal Crossing is huge. A lot of people don't realize how big this game franchise truly is. And you might notice in this video right away that while Animal Crossing New Leaf was kind of a culmination of the previous themes set by previous titles, keeping the town village aesthetic, instead Animal Crossing New Horizons stepped out of that and leaned more into this island paradise type theming. New Horizons definitely was stepping out to try to do something different, and in the process, some features and characters that were staples across franchise history were replaced in honor of new mechanics that would be introduced in New Horizons. And this is kind of where a lot of the early division comes from the fan base. And there there are some massive differences really when it comes to Animal Crossing New Leaf and Animal Crossing New Horizons. Animal Crossing New Horizons featured a rich and wide range of brand new features that were franchise firsts for Animal Crossing. However, Animal Crossing New Leaf, despite lacking some of the newer features that are now staples across New Horizons, or returning features that New Horizons later perfected, it did offer a different kind of depth and charm within each feature. While New Horizons excelled in customization and had features like terraforming, Animal Crossing New Leaf had its strengths in other areas, with a lot of features having very intricate and subtle details that made the general world building around this 3DS title exceedingly deep. For example, Animal Crossing New Leaf had the main street, which would evolve over the player's time playing the game, which provided this unique immersive experience, allowing players to witness the growth and transformation of their town just over time. And even after numerous of updates to Animal Crossing New Horizons, there were still aspects that New Leaf had mastered, which New Horizons seemingly lacked altogether. And I think that this is probably one of the biggest appealing points for New Leaf fans that underlines its enduring appeal, just because some of these older features remained completely unmatched from New Horizons versions. As we use Main Street as an example, over time as a player, you see this street grow and more shops are added and other shops upgrade and get bigger. For a very long time, New Horizons just didn't have a lot of these shops. You just had a simple shop and occasionally a vendor would come by at your main square. It wasn't until way later on was there an update to Harv's Island, giving players a place that they could fly to do a lot of the features that you already could do in your main street back in Animal Crossing New Leaf. And even then, this version obviously feels almost like a step down from what we had in New Leaf, as they were dedicated stores that you could just easily access by crossing some railroad tracks rather than having to go to the airport and click through a bunch of dodo options. Now, there are a lot of really great videos that are already out there of Animal Crossing YouTubers talking about some of the things New Leaf had that New Horizons never had. However, we shouldn't fully forget that New Horizons did do a lot of very ambitious upgrades from New Leaf to New Horizons that were pretty massive game changers. I mean, the whole fact that you can terraform your island now is a huge overhaul from anything remotely close to anything that we had in the past. Being able to quickly tear down and build up cliffs or close off or expand rivers, these are all really, really big. And while New Leaf and even some games before that allowed you to do some level of public works to build things like bridges, New Horizons streamlined the whole process, allowing you to quickly change and alter your island however you wanted to once you've gotten through the main quest line that Nook has. Tying that with the fact that now we could just freely put furniture outdoors was also a massive jump for the franchise. Now, I'm not going to downplay New Leaf's public works system though, because it was a huge jump from what we had before. Before, you were very limited on things that could go outside, and New Leaf did allow you through the public work systems to put quite a bit of things outside, and some of these are really awesome looking. But it pales in comparison, since New Horizons just gave you full-on free reign to do whatever you wanted with furniture outdoors, and also included a lot of those public work furniture sets as just regular furniture now that you could either craft or buy and just put on your island. It did definitely add to the creativity side of Animal Crossing New Horizons, but maybe it did water down some of the coolness factor of finally paying off or collecting a really rare public works piece in New Leaf that you had to like grind a long time to finally get built on your island, where New Horizons you could just like throw that on your island pretty quickly. Animal Crossing New Leaf though, while it didn't have as much outdoor stuff you could do, it did kind of beat out New Horizons when it came to indoor or house related decisions. Not only did New Leaf have a bigger house overall, as all of the side rooms could be upgraded one more time in size, allowing for more furniture placement. While fans expected it in an update, New Horizons never did get an upgrade to the house size, and while New Horizons did include exterior modifications where you can change the appearance of your house, and more options would come later on to really mix things up, they don't nearly compare to the options that New Leaf had when you wanted to decorate what your buildings look like on the outside. Not only could you decorate how your own house looked, but you could also change things like the town hall's outer appearance too, which was a huge plus that, oddly enough, never came over in New Horizons. But look, on the other hand, And New Leaf did have some really cool things also, like co-op activities, like mini games and island touring. What? How? After all this time, do we not have any type of mini games in New Horizons? I mean, they were basic back in the New Leaf days, but they were something. There was also a lot of characters that existed in New Leaf that were sidelined or forgotten altogether. We're talking Copper, Booker, Pelly, Pete, and Phyllis, Lyle, Digby, my brother, where are you at? There was also the Nook Store upgrades in New Leaf. We got so many different versions of the store. We had a section that even had Gracie with her own little department within the store. I mean, Leaf was here, the whole gang was set up here. New Horizons, we get one, just one upgrade. New Horizons had some stuff standing out for it too. There was character customization, it was much more evolved. We get the cool Villager 4.0, look at that. We get socks and shoes. There was better resident control, like your villagers just won't move out without you approving it first. And hey, we can decorate stuff on the beach, so that's kind of cool. To be fair, there were a lot of things that were really unique about New Leaf that eventually did make their way into New Horizons in one way or another, just maybe not as flashy of a way. Like for instance, sure, Leaf doesn't get his dedicated store section in Nook's Cranny, but he does have a little booth set up at Harv's Island. There's no dedicated club like in New Leaf, but there is a dance rave at Paradise Island. And sure, some things aren't as deep as they once were, like the Roost was way deeper back in the New Leaf days, but I mean, we get to do exercises in the morning, so the Switch has that on the 3DS. Now, of course, there are some features from New Leaf that had quality of life things that I would argue are better handled than maybe New Horizons. Like for instance, tools couldn't break back in the day. That was really nice. There were way more Nintendo references and Easter eggs that were commonplace, but seemingly were reduced when New Horizons came out. And of course, I kind of missed the commonplace of pranks like pitfall seeds just happening on a regular basis that you could fall in. I know, I would get annoyed with them, but now I kind of miss them. They're not just randomly spawned on your island anymore. Of course, the Switch does have an upgrade when it comes to overall visuals as well with the Switch versus the 3DS. Like, the textures on the villagers feel more alive-like and not necessarily just a blank 3D creature. If you look at the villagers side by side, you get what I'm talking about. What about the music itself, though? This is definitely a hard one to dissect. The music of Animal Crossing New Horizons presents itself as a blissful soundtrack that beautifully captures the essence of an island paradise. Its cheerful melodies, soothing rhythms, and vibrant instrumentation create an immersive atmosphere. However, beneath the surface, there's a subtle touch of melancholy that adds depth to the music, and our juxtaposition of joy and wistfulness reflects the bittersweet nature of the player's experience, reminding them of the fleeting nature of their island getaway and a longing for a simpler, carefree life. There's a lot of greatness with the soundtrack in New Horizons. It's peaceful, ambitious, the 3 a.m. music makes you feel like you're losing your mind. There's something really special about some of the other tracks, like the 5 a.m. music. It's just really peaceful. On the other hand, there's a lot to love about Animal Crossing New Leaf soundtrack as well. It's more traditional to the series, but I would argue that it in a way presents itself as a calming soundtrack that captures the essence of living in a peaceful forest. Its gentle melodies, soothing instrumentation, and ambient sounds create a serene and nostalgic atmosphere. The music transports players to a tranquil world where they can immerse themselves in the joys of nature, and just the use of the piano in the soundtrack just sounds extra special. When it comes to events and holidays across Animal Crossing, things are kind of different. New Leaf had some really cool things that they had that were really unique, and New Horizons seemed to make a lot of the events simple. However, there were some really cool and unique ideas that were presented in New Horizons too, like the Mayday Maze. A lot of people also point to villager personalities being much better in the New Leaf days, and I can agree to that to an extent. I felt like, in general, the dialogue that you have between villagers in New Leaf was a bit deeper. It felt like these were actual characters in the world, and New Horizons definitely was rightfully criticized for having more surface level conversations available with the villagers. But I would almost go as far as arguing that while New Leafs does beat New Horizons here, I think they both were still skimmed down a lot from the type of conversations and dialogue you would have way back in the day in the earliest Animal Crossing Crossing games, like Wild World or the GameCube version. These games, the villagers would sometimes be really mean in some ways for no reason, and slowly you would grow on them and they would grow on you, and you would form a real friendship. Later on, it felt like Nintendo tried to kind of smooth things out, so some of these characters were maybe more approachable. So it's hard for me to pick between New Horizons and New Leaf for dialogue when things from Wild World, for example, were so much better and more interesting. Maybe that's a video for another time where we look at the original mean villagers from back in the day and how the payoff for having those villagers in your town was really cool, actually. But now let's go ahead and talk about updates. When it came to updates across Animal Crossing games, a lot of people felt that New Horizons completely dropped the ball when it came to updates. At first, we were getting a regular flow of interesting features finally being implemented in the game, and then they became further and further apart in updates, and the features became less and less substantial until we had nothing, and then the big 2.0 update that was actually really good. And then after that, it's been back to nothing, and it's been really rough. Now, New Leaf, on the other hand, does get a lot of praise for its post-game support because it got an unexpected but massive update, which came to Animal Crossing New Leaf 4 years after the original release of the game, and added a lot of new features like new villagers, new special characters. There were campgrounds, town initiatives, home improvements. Technically, those mini games did come in this upgrade as well, and one of the biggest ones was the ability to sell your town and start fresh, but also allow players to have a large amount of bells to start things off with, which was kind of like a new game plus mode. There were little things too, like players could sit on rocks, and just a lot of other miscellaneous changes that really brought new life to the game. It was massive and substantial and well received across the board, but I mean, if we're gonna compare updates across Animal Crossing games, this was pretty much the only massive upgrade that Animal Crossing New Leaf had 4 years after its launch. And yeah, it was substantial and awesome, but like, that's comparing apples and oranges. New Horizons released and saw more regular updates, obviously with updates coming weeks after the game came out, but New Horizons also was missing a lot of core features early on that were just being re-added into the game. I think the real issue here is New Horizons lacked a lot of the deeper features that New Leaf just had simply at day one or had after its big update. New Horizons should have released with the same amount of content that New Leaf had at its update point, and then the new features should have been there on top of all of it. Sure, things would come over time, but a lot of stuff never ended up coming at all. Why weren't things like swimming, art, the froggy chair, and dream addresses not there from the very beginning of the game's launch? Now, a lot of features did come relatively quickly, so we can forgive some of that, but what about all the features that were expected to come that never came either? I've been pretty hard on New Horizons in this video, and the ultimatum I come to, though, is still probably one that's not the most popular opinion. I love New Leaf, but I still think ultimately Animal Crossing New Horizons is the better game, ever so slightly. It really is a shame that the 2.0 update that released with Happy Home Paradise's DLC came so late. So many fans burned out early that would have probably really appreciated having the game where it was when 2021 ended. All of this DLC probably should have come out a year earlier, to be honest. Being able to do things like add accent walls, add new walls altogether, customize your villagers' houses, and then the whole addition of Happy Home Paradise as DLC rather than a standalone game was massive for bringing this game to the level of functionality that longtime fans definitely had expected. I mean, they nearly doubled the amount of furniture items in a single update, and that was incredible. And bringing back many characters was awesome, but why did it take so long, and why did it just stop abruptly there? Now, I do have a theory when it comes to New Horizons. If you remember back to the release, it felt like there were some updates, then a massive drought of content after a little while. It was pretty rough. My theory is when the decision was made to push Animal Crossing back 4 months to March, it ended up throwing a massive wrench in the plans for how content would be released to players and what they would experience. While I think the plan was to still drip feed content, something I don't necessarily agree with, I think it would have appeared much more consistent and frequent with the original plan if the game would have released that holiday season in 2019. For instance, imagine the game coming out with a November release instead. November would have been a great time for players to start, not too much would be going on, and they still would get to maybe participate in a single event like the holiday that's in November. Then after that, all of the Christmas decorations and snow coming in for the first time would be really exciting, and January after the Christmas rush, maybe they would tease the big things coming coming up in spring. Festivale happens in February, and Bunny Day happening later on would be probably more acceptable. Remember, Bunny Day really sucked at the beginning because everyone was just getting started, and then we're also being bombarded with eggs when people were just trying to like resource gather. It made people absolutely hate Bunny Day. Then imagine 5 months in, May Day, and the addition of bushes and shrubs would have gotten fans really hyped up for all of this new content coming out in this order instead, and then the rest of the year would play out. But I think the first year would have felt way more eventful had it released in this order, and I think the delay forced them to start later in the event calendar, and maybe some special events had to get skipped, and then it made the whole timeline of when to make content and prepare for fans to get to experience content all shook up. I think they ended up deciding to slow down across 2021 dramatically and then hold out for the big 2.0 update, but that was a long time since launch and many players burned out at the end of 2021. And still though, the content that did come in that 2.0 update was absolutely superb. Also, it's worth noting, there's absolutely no excuse for Nintendo to abandon Animal Crossing as early as they did. I think it's the only game franchise where I think people would have embraced some level of microtransactions if it was done correctly, with a lot of free content being included, of course. And it's rare I would say something like that because so many games out there do microtransactions poorly. But if there was a non-invasive option with the amount of love that the franchise has from its fans, I think Nintendo missed a massive opportunity to build an ecosystem that fans would be willing to support if it meant more regular content as well. I think a lot of longtime fans of the Animal Crossing series look back at their time with New Leaf as a magical moment. Rightfully so. That game was absolutely incredible. There's no denying that. And I think the shortcomings of New Horizon early on has maybe tarnished its reputation a bit, and some people are maybe a little bit bitter with the way that this game was handled, and rightfully so. Though, if I have to make a video comparing Animal Crossing New Leaf to Animal Crossing New Horizons, and we're just taking the final forms of those games, where New Horizons landed after all of its content was there, where New Leaf was after all of its content, I still think New Horizons takes the cake just because of the fact that there was so much creativity with how you could design and manifest your island however you wanted. And I think New Leaf paved the way for this game to even be possible, and it's very important that people appreciate New Leaf. And maybe, hopefully one day in the future, the next game takes more notes from Animal Crossing New Leaf and brings the game up to par and makes the ultimate Animal Crossing experience. But who knows how long that will be at this point. Still, I'm optimistic for the future. There's a lot to appreciate about the Animal Crossing franchise as a whole, and I look forward to looking at more things into the future. So make sure you subscribe with notifications on for more videos like this if you enjoyed this deep dive, and if you disagree with me on my opinion here, let me know in the comments why you think New Leaf was the better game. I think we went over a lot of really good points, but I'm sure I missed some really awesome things that were in New Leaf. It's been a minute since I've played those games. I look forward to going back to New Leaf soon, but I've been a fan since the first game came out on the GameCube, so I've experienced them all, and New Leaf definitely is a special game. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys all next time with a brand new video.